it's the end of the year, so what are we going to do? We're going to look at the very best light novels and Japanese literature that I have read over the last year. These are all Japanese light novels with the odd, well, Japanese novel thrown in. We're not going to have Chinese web novels or Korean web novels included in here. We're not going to have American titles. These are all Japanese releases. The first title we're going to talk about is The Kept Man of the Princess Knight. Now, this one is one that, if I'm honest, you guys pushed me to read it. I wasn't too thrilled by the look of the original cover, and the synopsis kind of put me off. But I persevered, and if I'm honest, I was a little bit unsure after the first volume. But after volume 2, I really enjoyed this one. Now, this is about a man named Matthew, who, well, he's the kept man of the Princess Knight. A kept man is somebody who has to attend to the Princess's Knight every whim. He has to keep her satisfied in more ways than one, and pretty much as you would expect. However, Matthew has a dark secret, and, well, in order to protect that secret and keep the Princess Knight, well, right, he has got to do some horrible things. Now, if you want a character that is a little bit more of an underhand, a little bit more of a scumbag, this is the one for you. This is not a nice series at all. People are going to die. Plot important people as well. And Matthew is not necessarily the nicest character around, which in some ways made it a little bit refreshing, but it also means that there is a little bit of a barrier for entry. If you're wanting a series where the main character is super awesome and is overpowered and good at just about everything he does, and all of the girls love him just because no reason whatsoever, no, you're not going to get that here. You are going to get quite a serious title, and Matthew is a very well written protagonist with a ton of flaws. But yes, this is definitely one that is worth your time, and I would wholeheartedly recommend you guys check it out. Next up is Rivier and the Land of Prey. Now, you guys are probably already aware that I am a huge fan of The Wandering Witch, Journey of Elena, and Rivier is a nice little spin-off in that world. This series focuses on Rivier, as to be expected, and she is, well, she's got a curiosity shop. She's got a little antique shop. However, there's something strange with some of these antiques. Some of these antiques, well, they have curses or magical abilities that can completely change things for the better or for the worse. And Rivier, along with a certain wandering witch, have to try and put things right. Now, I was a huge fan of Wandering Witch, and anything that lets me delve more into that world is always a good thing. Now, this one is a little bit of a cheat because, let's face it, it's a spin-off to an already popular title, and it's one that takes place a little bit later in the timeline. But if you're a fan of Wandering Witch, like I am, and yes, I'm aware people aren't a huge fan of Elena, but if you like the world and want a bit of a better protagonist, or a nice protagonist, this one is certainly one that might be worth your time. I really enjoyed it to the point that well, it's in my list of top 10 or, well, top whatever. And yes, it's one that delves more into the already wonderful world of Wandering Witch, and is a good one for it. The next title we're going to talk about is, well, it's a Japanese novel, and it is You Can't See the Snore. Now, there's going to be a few of these titles on this list because, if I'm perfectly honest, I have had a really good year of enjoying Japanese literature, and that means I've got to enjoy a lot of, well, novels that Yen Press and other publishers have put out under, well, translating from Japanese. Now, not necessarily a light novel, but I think light novel fans will enjoy these, so they're going on the list, and quite frankly, it's my list as well, so yay. So You Can't See the Snore is about a young man who falls in love with a girl over the summertime. They have a wonderful, beautiful relationship. However, one day she says, "Oh, we can't see each other anymore, find another girlfriend." And he doesn't understand why. However, he discovers that she has an illness that makes her sleep through the entirety of winter, thus never ever seeing the snow. And what we have here is a rather beautiful title that focuses on a relationship with someone who is unwell. And that's not going to be the last one we're going to talk about, because while we're also on this, let's also talk about In a World of Lies, I Fell into an Unforgettable Love. Now, this is also one with a person with an illness. However, the roles have changed. This is about a young man who discovers he is going to die in a year. He quite fancies this girl who's part of a film club, and they strike a friendship, which soon leads into love. And things get a little bit more complicated as his illness starts to take shape. Now, both of these titles are about people with illnesses, and they're both different for it. But I would recommend either one to you. They're both novels, but you can read them rather quickly. They're both very beautiful titles that are absolutely worth your time and investment. The next title we're going to talk about is The God of Nishi Gama Station. Now, this one is another novel that was put out, and again, it is a bit of an emotional title. Now, this one is about a train, as to be expected. A train that derails one day and kills everybody who is inside. Everybody blames the driver. However, there's a little bit more to it. However, what's important about this title is that this is a title about loss. While the other two titles were also about loss, this is about loss for different types of people. Two young people who are in love and about to get married. A child with his first crush. A son who loses a father. And the widow of the deceased train driver. All of these have different perspectives of death. And this is one where these people discover the ability to board the train and converse with their departed loved one once more. And it's a fantastic read. This is one that, if you want something a bit more mature, like the other two we've just spoke about, they need to be on your list. Each and every one of them is absolutely fantastic, and it's nice to see more titles like this being brought to an audience. I feel like light novels are getting a bit of a stigma of being isekai or villainous trash. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But with titles like this amongst them, they're absolutely beautiful and definitely worth reading. We've talked a lot about death in here, and well, we're going to talk about once more, because we have Once Upon a Witch's Death. Now, this isn't the only witchy thing I've read this year. In fact, it seems to be very common that witchy titles with witches in are becoming very popular, and I'm all for it. A good witch story is always something a little bit fun. Now, this is about a young girl who discovers that she has got a year or so to live. Now, we've seen this in a previous title we talked about, but this one is a little bit more positive. While the other one was about a young man who knew he was going to die and is trying his best to live his life before dying, this one is about a young witch. And she has been tasked to get 1,000 tears of joy. And the tears of joy have got to come from people who she's helped out. And if she gets those tears of joy, she could potentially undo the curse that is going to kill her in a year. And what we have here is not a story necessarily about death and loss, but this is a story about the joy of living. It's one that I read and absolutely loved, and I can't wait for more. I believe it's getting an anime next year, and yeah, it's a really fantastic title. It needs to be on your to read list if you haven't already checked it out. The next title is Brunhild the Dragon Slayer. Now, there have been a few volumes of this release. So this one is the first one, Brunhild the Dragon Slayer. There is also Brunhild the Dragon Princess. I've only read this one so far, but look forward to a review on both this one and the Dragon Princess in the new year. So this is about a young girl who is found by a dragon. Now, these dragons have protected the world forever, and the dragon raises the girl as his own, and he teaches her the way of God. It is very biblical, but what is interesting about this one is that he teaches her, if you're truly good, God will accept you. The dragon, however, is killed by man, and the girl is reunited with her real father. But this girl doesn't know. Does she accept the dragon's teachings and be truly good, or does she get vengeance? And that is the question. This is an absolutely fantastic title that desperately needs to be on your release. It's fantastic. It is one of the best pieces of literature I have read this year, and I've read a lot of really good ones. This one is just perfection, and I'm really looking forward to checking out the second volume. While we're talking about God, let's have another title about God. Well, not God as in our Christian God, but the gods of Japan. Now, what happens if there were gods that needed a place to relax, a place to unwind? We have Kusanoki's Garden of Gods. Now, I've spoken about this one previously, and I've said this is one that I don't think is getting to get much love, but I think that a lot of people will enjoy it. And if I'm a little bit honest, I've kind of pushed this one onto this list to try and get more people to check it out, because this one is a good one. Now, it's a little bit different. If you want your swordsman going around killing God or fighting God or blood and guts and all that kind of thing all over the place, not here. Not here. If you want somebody chilling on a porch, eating sweets and drinking beer or sake, this one's probably for you. So this is about a young guy who has always had a connection with Japanese gods. So, you know, the god of the mountain, the god of the stream, the god of the gate, the god of the anime waifu figures, you know the thing. But this one is interesting because he inherits an inn, you know, the old Ryokan Love Hina style inn, and with that, a garden. And he soon discovers that some of these gods, some gods are coming to just kind of come and chill in the garden, and if he entertains them, they will bestow upon him some of their wisdom. And it's just a nice peaceful, a nice relaxing title. Like I said, I've had a lot of titles about death and getting to grips with people dying or loved ones dying or people facing their own mortality. So it was nice to have a title that is just about relaxing, taking a little bit of time to yourself, sitting in the back garden, chilling with some sweets, chilling with some beer or sake with a couple of good friends. And that's the great thing about this one. This is a light novel that I kind of want to see more of. A light novel that is just so relaxing, so kind of doing its own thing in a world of villainesses and isekai protagonists. This is a fantastic one and needs to be on your to read list if you want something comfy anyway. Playing deaf games to put food on the table is a title that I just didn't expect to enjoy. I'm not a huge fan of deaf games, as you guys are probably aware if you've seen this channel over the last few months, and I've talked about this one many times. I'm not a huge fan of deaf games, and what I found with this one was something interesting. Now, if you guys have read Wandering Witch, you know that that is a title that kind of is about a bunch of different girls doing different things. So this is about a young girl who plays death games as her job. She's trying to get to the number 100, clear 100 death games because it's a challenge. And what we have here is a series of very short death games. Now, I've read the first 2 volumes of this one, and it's quite interesting in how it's done because it's not done in order. So what we might have here is, it might start off on, for example, death game number 25, and then the next one might be number 30, or then the next one might be number 2. It's kind of all over the place. But as the stories continue, we get a bunch of recurring characters, and that's what makes this more interesting. It's not about one person playing death games, it's about a whole cast of different girls playing death games to try and survive. Now, the death games are a little bit tamer than what you would expect in, say, Kaiji or Danganronpa, because of a special system put in which people can potentially, if they've lost a limb, they could potentially have it sewn back on at the end, kind of thing. It's a little bit restrained, but it's a good one for it. And as with a few times in this list, we have a protagonist who isn't necessarily the nicest person. They're sometimes having to do things they don't want to do in order to survive, as you would probably expect. But if you are interested in death games, if you want a lot of cute girls killing each other, then you're probably going to have a good time with this one. And again, this one gets on the list for being something a little bit more unique, something a little bit fun and, well, challenging in a different way. Before we go on to the last one, here are 3 more titles that I just kind of want to quickly talk about. We have Festival of Heresies, we have Lacrimosa of Dana, a novel adaptation of the Ys number 8 games, and we have Nier Replicant Volume 1. These are all titles that I read and really enjoyed, just didn't enjoy them quite as much as others, and, well, I was a little bit reliant maybe on knowing what happens in a specific video game that I couldn't just recommend as a standalone title. Still, check these ones out if you get a chance. The last title we're going to talk about is Blade and Bastard. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've had a script written for volume 1 of this for quite some time. I actually read this, I think it was like at the end of 2023. I just never got around to it. In fact, actually the last word was kind of something a little bit off-putting, but now I'm kind of in a good position. We might see that. In fact, volume 2 arrived not so long ago, so we'll read volume 2 and then do it. So, Blade and Bastard is your fantasy title. If you want a dungeon crawling fantasy title, this one needs to be on your list. It's a good one. It is a very fun one. Now, this is written by the author of Goblin Slayer, but unlike Goblin Slayer, it's a little bit more reserved, if you know what I mean. It's not got that kind of thing that Goblin Slayer kind of had. It's mentioned, it's just not the focal point. It's also got art by Sobin, who also likes Hololive and also did the artwork for Overlord, but is a Hololive fan. So Blade and Bastard is about, well, this is about the underbelly of the fantasy world. This is about the people who are forgotten about. So when we think of a dungeon crawler, we think of Dungeons and Dragons. We think of the hero, we think of the mage, we think of the cleric, we think of the tank, we think of the thief. This is about the ones that are a little bit more forgotten about. This is about the ones who go into the dungeon to collect the corpses of the people who die in the dungeon. They retrieve the corpses, and then if there's a resurrection or what have you, they get them resurrected and get some change for it. But there is a bit of a story going on underfoot, and that is the magic of this, because these are going to be the ragtag adventurers that probably aren't necessarily suited to go and be the protagonists, but they're the ones we're going to get, and it's a nice refreshing take on it. Now, if you are a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, this one should be on your list, but don't go Dungeons and Dragons, think Wizardry, which was a Japanese series based on Dungeons and Dragons. Just kind of, yeah, but it's a good one. If you want a dark fantasy based on D&D, this one should be on your list, and it is wholeheartedly a recommended title from me. Now, those were my favourite titles from 2024. What is on your list? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of titles that people have read this year and want to shout about them in the comments. But yes, let me know what you guys have enjoyed this year, and I will see you very soon